The congregation shivered in the cold. Notre Dame echoed with the sounds of 400 musicians and singers. The young man, born on the island of Corsica, moved impatiently forward. Napoleon Bonaparte, 35 years old, was about to be crowned Emperor of France. "I found the crown of France in the gutter," he said, "and I picked it up." It was December 2nd, 1804. Within 3 years, Napoleon's conquest would extend his empire across almost all of Europe, and he would rule over 70 million people. Not since the ancient Caesars had one man held so much power.
Napoleon changed the world. Here is a man who rises not on the basis of his blood, not on the basis of his background, but on the basis of his ability. No one else has appeared like him, has dominated the world like he has.
Qu'est-ce que Napoléon?
What is Napoleon?
C'est une main.
It's a hand in a shirt.
C'est un
It's a strange hat.
C'est bizarre. Si vous mettez ce
If you show the
chapeau,
hat,
si
if you
vous
show the
mettez
hand in the
la
shirt,
main
in Japan, the United States, or France, everybody will say Napoleon.
Napoléon.
He was above all ambitious. He loved power. He said, "I love power," like a musician loves his music.
Napoleon mounted the steps to the altar alone. Seizing the crown in his own hands, he held it aloft. Then brought it to rest on his own head. That morning, he had quietly told his brother, "If only our father could see us now." In the spring of 1769, Letizia and Carlo Bonaparte were crossing the mountains that straddled the interior of the island of Corsica. They were Corsican patriots, determined to repel a French army that had invaded their tiny island nation.
The Corsicans were only about 100 to 120,000 people of peasant or shepherd origin. They had very few firearms, very little gunpowder, and that was all. They had to defend themselves against the 22 million population of France, then the most advanced country in Europe.
The Corsicans never stood a chance. After a year of fighting, leaving thousands dead and wounded, they were defeated, and Letizia and Carlo were going home. Letizia was 6 months pregnant. That summer, Letizia was celebrating the Feast of the Assumption when she felt her first labor pains. Later that day, August 15, 1769, she gave birth to a son, Napoleon Bonaparte. Born just after the bitter French conquest, Napoleon would spend his childhood hating France, the nation he would one day rule. "I was born when Corsica was perishing," Napoleon later wrote. 30,000 Frenchmen spewed onto our shores, drowning the throne of liberty in waves of blood. The cries of the dying, the groans of the oppressed, and tears of despair surrounded my cradle from the hour of my birth. Corsica was now a French colony. Suspended in the Mediterranean between France and Italy, for centuries Corsicans had fiercely resisted invaders, Romans, Moors, Genoese. After the French victory, Corsican rebels fled to the mountains, where they continued to fight on. But Napoleon's father, Carlo, a 23-year-old university student, readily submitted. Soon he was wearing powdered wigs, embroidered waistcoats, and silver-buckled shoes. Napoleon never forgave him for betraying his Corsican heritage. He would later say harshly that his father was rather too fond of pleasure.
I think Napoleon always held a grudge against his father for having submitted. But poor Carlo, he knew he had lost the battle. He realized the French were there, so he had to live with them and make the best of it.
Carlo began practicing law, won election to the Corsican Assembly, and rose in the esteem of the French rulers. But Napoleon rarely had a good thing to say about him. He saved his praise for his mother. The beautiful, strong-willed Letizia. As a mother, he would say, she was without equal.
He was obsessed by her, fascinated by her, praised her enormously. She was a very tough and determined little woman. 13 times pregnant, she had 8 surviving children. He says that all his success in life was due to the training she gave him.
La mère.
The mother. What a man, Napoleon said. She has the head of a man on the body of a woman.
Carlo and Letizia owned a house in the country as well as one in the city, a mark of their status. They were Corsican aristocrats, but they were not rich. With 8 children, they struggled just to get by on an island that had been impoverished for centuries. There was nothing, the ambitious couple believed, that Corsica could offer them or their children. Only one country could, the country that had vanquished their own, France. As a representative of the Corsican Parliament, Carlo traveled to Versailles. There he saw the splendor of the French court in all its majesty. France was the envy of Europe. Great Britain, Austria, Prussia, Spain, none had more people,